Rome once persecuted Christians. Then, one emperor claimed he saw a sign from heaven, and everything changed. Imagine an empire so powerful that its armies stretched across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Rome ruled millions. Its emperors commanded enormous armies, controlled vast cities, and were treated with almost divine reverence. But within this empire lived a growing community that refused to worship the Roman gods. They called themselves Christians. For generations, Christians faced periods of persecution, imprisonment, confiscation of property, and execution. Then, in the early 4th century, something extraordinary happened. A Roman soldier rose toward the imperial throne. His name was Constantine, and within a few decades, the emperor who once ruled a pagan empire would become one of the most important figures in Christian history. But Constantine's story doesn't begin with a peaceful conversion. It begins with war. Constantine was born around the year 272 AD into the turbulent world of the late Roman Empire. His father, Constantius Chlorus, was a Roman military commander who eventually became emperor. Constantine grew up surrounded by soldiers, politics, ambition, and danger. Rome was no longer governed by a single, unquestioned ruler. Several emperors and rivals competed for power. And when Constantine's father died in Britain in 306 AD, his soldiers proclaimed Constantine emperor. He was still a young man, but he now stood at the center of a struggle that could determine the future of Rome. His greatest rival in the West was Maxentius. Their armies would eventually meet outside Rome, at a place that would become legendary, the Milvian Bridge. In the autumn of 312 AD, Constantine marched toward Rome. Maxentius had a powerful army. Constantine's forces were smaller, and according to later Christian accounts, Constantine faced the coming battle with something more than military strategy. He prayed. Then came the story that would change history. The Christian historian Eusebius, writing later, reported that Constantine told him he saw a miraculous sign associated with the cross and received a message connected with victory. Another Christian writer, Lactantius, gives a somewhat different version, describing a dream in which Constantine was instructed to mark the Christian symbol on his soldiers' shields. The details differ. Historians continue to debate exactly what Constantine experienced, but one thing is clear. Constantine later attributed his victory to the Christian God. And the next day, Constantine went to battle. The armies clashed near the Tiber River. Maxentius was defeated. As his forces retreated, disaster struck. Maxentius himself fell into the river and drowned. Constantine entered Rome victorious. He was now the dominant ruler of the Western Roman Empire. But Constantine did not simply claim victory. He claimed something far more powerful: divine favor. For centuries, Rome's emperors had presented themselves as defenders of the traditional gods. Now Constantine was beginning to associate his own authority with the God of Christianity. And this would transform the relationship between the Roman Empire and the Christian faith. In 313 AD, Constantine and his fellow emperor Licinius issued what became known as the Edict of Milan. It established religious toleration and allowed Christians to worship openly. Property confiscated during earlier persecutions was to be restored. Christianity was no longer simply a faith practiced under threat. It could now exist openly within the Roman Empire. But Constantine did not immediately erase the old religions. The Roman world remained religiously diverse, and Constantine himself continued to use traditional Roman imagery and practices. His relationship with Christianity was complex, yet his support was unmistakable. He funded churches, he supported Christian communities, and he increasingly presented himself as a protector of the Christian faith. But there was a problem. The Christians themselves were divided. One of the greatest controversies concerned a question at the very heart of Christian belief. Who exactly was Jesus Christ in relation to God the Father? A presbyter named Arius argued for one understanding. His opponents argued that Christ was fully divine. The disagreement spread. Churches became divided. Arguments became political. And Constantine wanted unity. So in 325 AD, he summoned bishops from across the empire to the city of Nicaea. It became one of the most important gatherings in Christian history, the First Council of Nicaea. Imagine the scene. Hundreds of bishops gathered together. Some carried scars from earlier persecutions. Others had traveled enormous distances across the Roman world. They came together to debate theology. Constantine himself attended. He was not a bishop, but he was emperor, and he wanted the church to be united. The council produced the Nicene Creed, which expressed the belief that the Son is of the same divine essence as the Father. The council also dealt with other matters concerning church discipline and the celebration of Easter. The emperor had entered the theological world, and Christianity had entered the center of imperial politics. But Constantine's story was about to become even bigger. Constantine understood something that many rulers before him had learned the hard way. The Roman Empire was enormous, and its center of gravity was shifting eastward. So Constantine chose an ancient city called Byzantium. He rebuilt it on an imperial scale. In 330 AD, he inaugurated it as Constantinople, the city of Constantine. It became known as the New Rome. Its position between Europe and Asia made it strategically and economically important. For centuries afterward, Constantinople would stand as one of the great Christian capitals of the world. Constantine had not merely won battles, he had reshaped the map of Roman power. But Constantine was not a saint during his lifetime. His story contains a darker side. Imperial power remained brutal. Political rivals were eliminated. And in 326 AD, Constantine ordered the execution of his son Crispus. His wife Fausta also died that same year under circumstances recorded by ancient sources. The exact motivations and circumstances remain debated, but the episode reveals a difficult truth about Constantine. He could support Christianity while still behaving like a Roman emperor surrounded by suspicion, dynastic politics, and absolute power. History is rarely as simple as a hero and a villain. Constantine was both a political ruler and a religious patron. His faith changed the empire, but he remained a product of the violent world in which he lived. In the final years of his life, Constantine continued to rule. He had survived civil wars. He had defeated his rivals. He had reunited the empire under his authority. He had supported Christianity. He had called the Council of Nicaea, and he had created a new imperial capital. But Constantine knew that his own life was coming to an end. In 337 AD, he became seriously ill. Then came a remarkable final chapter. Constantine was baptized shortly before his death. The baptism was traditionally associated with Eusebius of Nicomedia, although the exact circumstances have been discussed by historians. The emperor, who had spent decades shaping the Roman world, now prepared to face death as a Christian. Constantine died in 337 AD. He was about 65 years old. So what did Constantine actually accomplish? He did not single-handedly create Christianity. Christians had existed for centuries before him. They had preached, they had written, they had built communities, and many had died for their faith. Constantine entered that story later, but his intervention changed its scale. Before Constantine, Christianity had existed within the Roman Empire while facing periods of severe persecution. After Constantine, Christian institutions received imperial protection and patronage. Churches could rise openly. Bishops could gather across the empire. Christian debates could become matters of imperial concern. And the emperor himself became deeply involved in the affairs of the church. The transformation was enormous. More than 17 centuries later, Constantine's name still echoes through Christian history. The city he rebuilt would survive for nearly 1,000 years after his death. The council he summoned would shape Christian theology for generations. And the emperor who claimed that the Christian God had granted him victory would become one of the most influential rulers in the history of Christianity. But perhaps the most fascinating question is not whether Constantine changed Christianity. He clearly did. The deeper question is this: did Christianity change Constantine? Was his conversion a sincere transformation of faith, a political calculation, or a complicated combination of genuine belief and imperial ambition? We may never know everything that happened inside the mind of the emperor, but we know what happened afterward. A faith once persecuted by Roman authorities had entered the imperial palace, and the Roman emperor himself had become its patron. Constantine's story began with a battle, but it ended with something far greater than victory on a battlefield. An emperor had looked toward the cross, and the course of an empire had changed forever. Yet Constantine was only the beginning, because centuries later, another Christian ruler would face an enemy many times stronger than his own army. A young king, a kingdom surrounded, a disease slowly destroying his body, and an approaching army led by one of history's greatest commanders. His name was Baldwin IV, the Leper King of Jerusalem.